control this. This is agility down to the lowest level of agility to train, to work on coordination and reaction and perception action, all that stuff. It's chaotic. Can't control these situations all the time. So that was the end of mine. I just wanted to fit into yours.
Nice. Perfect. Chaos does happen, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Mostly compliments.
Getting back to the beginning. Yeah. Right, LTAD for idiots. This idiot. This is the stuff I was talking about with Marty. Marty basically went, you're a big academy, and what does a good academy look like? And basically went through core LTAD principles, which you guys all know. You know this stuff. I'm preaching to the choir. So I will send you any of the research you want, any of these guidelines and principles that you want, all this stuff, right? But what the kind of I got a little bit distracted by. I thought you guys had an embedded growth and maturation process here. So hand in the air if you are aware of the research in growth and maturation status. No. One. Sucks.
Okay.
Right. Is there interest in learning about it?
Yes.
Okay. So, ostensibly, there is a significant difference between. You don't need to sit down. Jump. No. There we go. Right. So quickly through LTAD models. You heard Roderick Lloyd. This is the guess which gender it's for. It's not my model. So theoretically, there are appropriate times when you train specific physical qualities. That's what they go down to. Physical, neuromuscular qualities in boys and girls. And you guys work 14 up, is that right? Some of you work younger than 14, don't you? Rock and roll, my wheelhouse.
Simon, can I interject? You said physical qualities is just a bit of a pet peeve of mine. What you're actually talking about is capacities and abilities and capabilities, but not a quality. You know, it's not qualitative. Everybody makes that mistake. It's not a quality; it's an ability.
You've actually stayed and gone to Cardiff Met. You've been talking about this.
Yeah, I could have.
Yeah, that makes a whole ton of sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Yeah, capabilities and capacities. And so we're training specific capabilities and specific capacities at specific chronological times. So chronological being your year of birth, how old you are in relation to year of birth. Their growth and maturation status. So your maturation status is how close you are to being fully mature. And so we can kind of loosely put a number on this. If we'd have got 3 hours, we could have gone through a whole vat of research over this. But basically, there are a bunch of markers, but quickly, for you guys to adopt it in your system here, if you get the height of the two parents of your kid, and then measure the height of your kid, and run it through an equation that will give you a form to add the equation, it will give you a predicted adult height, and as a ratio, a percentage of that kid's adult height. So you can make little Johnny at 14, he can be 86% of the supposed adult height. They're fairly roughly within about 3% of being truly accurate, but we can get a maturation status. Do you understand what maturation status means? So what happens with maturing? You go through as a teenager. Puberty. What happens during puberty? What happens for a girl during puberty? Boy, please. Any of you boys?
They grow breasts.
Boobs. Nice. So we start to physically change shape. So one of the things that happens to girls is they start to store extra adipose tissue in certain areas around their body. They physically change shape. So consequence of that would be
Slow.
Zoomed out, they're heavier for a start. So if they're heavier, there's metabolic costs. Any other things that happen?
Slow down.
They slow down. Anything else? Any other consequences of puberty? Menstruation. And the consequence of menstruation. Just give me one. We could be here for a week. Forget the bleeding part.
The effects of the hormone change on ligaments and collagen and
Exactly. So hormone change. The biggest one is hormone change. Hormones. So you start to get the emotional consequences, particularly early on, once they're going through what we call peak height velocity, their growth spurt. Okay, which is the other main thing that happens through puberty. They go through their growth spurt. With this, if we quickly look, the girls will be a little bit before boys. So it happens like 11, 12. There is some kind of, I'm not quite sure what the demographic is in here, but it tends to be kind of white in Ireland. I hear there's some troubles. There are certain areas of the world where genetically they are predisposed to earlier maturation. So there's been quite a lot of research done in the Gulf states, and like their girls are going at 8 and 9. There's a girl in a primary school I'm at who is, her parents are from Nigeria, and already in year 4 she's fully formed, going, oh, you just don't want to live there. But yeah, so every child is slightly different, but you have to be aware that it happens in girls before boys. Give me some things that happen in boys, Connor.
Probably on the spot there, thanks. But their hormones change too, just a wee bit later. The growth spurs start to go. Nobody may get growth slag with me anyways. I was waiting on that,
Okay, so we grow.
Yeah.
Can you add an extra layer in?
When they grow, well, again, the body changes too, they get heavier, add a bit more muscle mass. With that there, the growth goes in, so they go injuries as well.
Lovely. Connor's done this already. But so we get more muscle. Immediately we get more muscle. There's a almost immediate consequence of going through peak height velocity. In the first 6 months of peak height velocity, their growth spurt, they gain up to 30% of their adult speed. Just changes instantly. So what happens to the kids that have yet to go through their growth spurt? We call these, so there are 4 types. We go with, I took it out, I took the slide out because I wasn't going through it. So we go prepubertal, kids that have not been anywhere. We go approaching, circa, and post. So approaching is anything that if you're measuring your kid, so with a adult height, if you start measuring every 3 months or so would be ideal. If you see a growth spurt of 2 centimeters or more, they're likely to be approaching adult their growth spurt, and then you can spot their growth spurt when it starts to go above that. If you go in, it depends whose model you're talking about, but if you're looking at 7 centimeters in a year, that's their growth spurt, and above that. My kids just had 9 in 4 months. Some of them, the late maturers just tend to rock it. But if they're going through that at the time, you will get something called, when they're playing adult awkwardness. So whereas they have their big growth spurt, they get tall, and their fingers suddenly aren't where their brain expects it to be. So they can't catch. Their throwing will be completely off. A consequence that you'll find is when they're fine, mostly fine running in a straight line, but as soon as they change direction, they look like gangly giraffes. You can see this as boys particularly go through their peak height velocity, they'll get gangly and long. And there's an 18-month process after that where they start to fill out and they become nudes. Girls have a similar thing, but they'll go through to also, at the same time as peak height velocity, there's a peak weight velocity. Girls tend to have a little bit of a weight gain just before, then for 6 months afterwards they'll have an extra weight gain where the girly bits will become more prominent, so they'll get a little bit more around their hips, and boys will get their muscle goes around their shoulders, their waist goes in, all that kind of stuff, right? through this happening, we have specific windows of training opportunities before their growth spurts. We can work on, early on we have neuromuscular training, so learning lots of skills, as much coordination and rhythm and timing as possible, but it also, doing that, what Stu was talking about, this one. What was this one called, Stu? This was frequency.
Magnitude and frequency.
Magnitude and frequency. So, kids, pre-puberty is down this end. You do lots of frequency, really high, of coordination stuff. It can be lots of games and stuff. But there's a weird consequence of that. As they start to hit their growth spurt, that becomes strength anyway. And they start to develop muscle just from you doing coordination stuff. Lots of real good basic fundamental movement skills. So we're looking at, during this period, lots of fundamental movement skills. Pre-puberty up to puberty, this is where I'll be going with developing capacity to repeat fundamental movement skills, working on the stuff that Stu's talking about, sprint techniques, change of direction skills. Here's a really good time to develop to keep their flexibility. Who works with 14-year-olds? Girls and boys, 14-year-old girls and boys, apart from they're very different like animals, do you see any difference in their flexibility?
I'm all boys.
Not really. Just some of them.
Not really. What happens after they go through their growth spurt? Boys
Because their body's
suddenly
different.
can't touch their toes. Yeah, you can get boys at 13 or pre-puberty, and they have, like, they can just do the splits. There's lots of them as well. If they've done any kind of gymnastics training or if they've pushed that as a pre-pubescent, they have really long range, and as soon as puberty hits, unless they're repeatedly delving into that skill, that it just goes. They just turn into blocks of wood that can often run fast and jump higher, but they have no flexibility anymore. And I find this in football. There's no. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask: is like considerations of lifestyle factors changed, say, in the last 15 years? You know, now like different childhood now, basically with iPad generation. You know, is there a difference with now? Is that a bigger? Like, was this the same thing 15 years ago?
It's another presentation.
I used to coach lads probably when I was 34 now, when I would say I was 20. And maybe I sound like an old man, but I was like, well, I took the 12, 13, 14-year-old lads. I don't remember them being as stiff as the lads that I work with now, basically. Now I'm from a really rural place, it's all farmers and stuff like that. You know, they're all outdoorsy. But maybe they're just not as outdoorsy, I don't know. But I would love to know, is there like, in time, has that changed? You know?
Who's the youngest here? Are you the youngest here?
Probably, yeah.
It'd be interesting to compare just literally your life experiences. But so for those that don't know this part of my job and my relationship with Marty, we have a program centered on superheroes, which is primarily designed around pre-puberty, around primary school age kids, and it works on fundamental movement. So it's in kids' primaries and academies, developing from. Do you want to stand up? Stand and crawl, please, Connor. Stu might recognise most of this shape. He's not getting 5 stars for that. But that's the first Spider-Man exercise. Okay, so we're working on the fundamentals really early on. You can get long drawn out story, but we've got there's 120 skills that they're learning. They're progressive from the beginning of that into bouncing inchworm. Can you do bouncing inchworm?
No.
Old dude. You can all copy this afterwards. There. Go on, here we go. Everybody, get up. Quickly, go join him.
Hey, Frank. There's plenty of physios in here, Frankie, you're fucking sorry.
Show me your dancing. Come on, show me your dancing skills, physios. Wusses, Jesus Christ, come on, Marty.
Which one?
Dancing is good.
Sorry, camera.
I can't wait.
Nice. Nice. Right. So it goes from the first core exercise to core. Standing crawl is a core exercise, a rotational core exercise, anti-rotation, and it drops down to that. For each of the exercises, there are 5 key coaching points that you can get a star for each. I don't even know. I can't believe we keep talking about you. They're superheroes, isn't it? And as a consequence of that, kids assess each other, and they start to aggregate points. So I can see the core capacities. So one of the streams is Captain Marvel, which is planking. It's basically a plank derivative. There are 24 layers, and it's all versions of anti-rotation. But I can see capacities of 5-year-olds when they enter the program, and I can see capacities of 15-year-olds that have been through the program. And so we can evidence your point of when we started the program 8 years ago, the average plank time for kids starting the program was like 48 seconds. 5 years ago, it had dropped down to 32 seconds, and last year it was 5. 5-year-olds were coming in and they couldn't hold their body off the floor for more than 5 seconds. That was the average across the, probably about 20,000 kids cohort last year in England. So yeah, there is definitely something drastically going on. And if you work in a primary school setting of ages, or with kids of that age, or you work with 12, 14-year-olds, you've got a wave coming. But the year 2 now, so they're 6 and 7, they basically have never been in education before COVID happened. So these are the COVID kids who, I don't know if any of you have kids or not, but my kids definitely, the behaviour they were allowed during COVID completely changed from what was before. So whereas my son was allowed 2 hours on a screen in a day, he then during COVID was just allowed on a screen the whole day, and it never went back. That has had some knock-on effect on both the physical activity of kids, but the physical competencies and capacities of kids right across. I see them, I work a lot with Female Football Academy. Yeah, terrible. We've got some that are athletes that have stood out, and then the younger cohort that are coming in now, they're like jelly. And these aren't what we had 10 years ago, which were a certain demographic that played women's football, and that were like jelly and just happened to like the culture of being around women's football. These are the kids that would traditionally have been gymnasts at school that are doing football instead, and they still can barely hold their body weight. So Ironman 12 is a single leg squat, and 13 single leg squat hold. So we pitch it at 4 levels each year. So by the time they're 9 and 10, they're doing single leg squat holds. And if they've been through the program, they're getting up to that level. But the kids entering at year 4, coming into that level there, like it's almost nobody can do it anymore. And there were about 40% that could do it 5 years ago. So you're right. That's our evidence of this, whatever's going on in this terrible world with that stuff.
Like football wise, we've seen it big time. Like we're back at we've Kildress and Ballinderry both went through the Super program through primary schools. I mean coaches right the way through, and you're seeing these same lads now that are at 16s and minor level in comparison to a club next door to them, not Tyrone, but they've never had that at that age, and you see the difference in the lads of that age group. They're all the same, they all look the same, but they move completely different. Like they're about 5 levels behind in comparison to the guys that went through the simple pathway of learning how to move and nearly earning the right to progress to the next movement level. And we're seeing it like with our program in the gym, the next gen. We see the wee kids that we come from our gymnastic club into the next gen in comparison to Joe Blogs that just comes in off the street or comes from a local football club. that has no background or own, would you say, muscle memory in comparison to it, like?
Yeah.
Is your point in that in football term or in the GA society term?
Okay, what you just said there, the earning the right to move on, the progressive, that stuff, it kind of links into actually what I want to talk about rather than superheroes, is is how you coach kids in an academy setting. Stu almost touched on earlier, there was a lot of stuff about confidence and success, and if you get humiliated, then they're going to leave and never going to want to come back, and it's about retention. My philosophy, Stu and I were talking about this, like, my philosophy in coaching, I have 6-year-olds that play tennis. They've got insane parents, and they're going to pay somebody, so if they come and pay us, at least they can come and play, and we can pretend they've done fantastic. But it's controlled there for time. But my point with them, as would be if you came to me and helped for you being pro, when you're 25, I want you to, the goal is to give you as broad a toolbox of movement skills so that it kind of reduces the any physical impediments that might prevent you from hitting your natural talent, the abilities that your talent will get you. So worst case, I want you, when you're 25, to be going out on Friday night and playing netball or basketball or GA. What do you actually call it? Football?
Yeah, it's football.
Or football, before you go and get pissed with your mates on a Friday night. And that's the lowest standard for me. And then I would like to push you into help you, nurture you into the direction that you want to go and make you the best version of you as an athlete. And I feel like that's what everybody within any academy setting, that should be your core principles, really. That should be the fundamental to what you strive for, is to make them the best athletic version of themselves. That make sense? Right. In an academy, you guys, I'd like you to think about the core values of the club. All clubs have kind of a strap line. I read one the other day. Safety, challenge, resilience. And this was a football club. I'm not sure what it even means. So, like, it's underneath the badge. You guys must have one, like a moniker. I did look for it, but there are lots of Irish words. No?
No.
Do you know the core values of Tyrone?
I definitely
There's no clear style. There's a clear structure.
GAA one overall is as many as possible for as long as possible. That's what they're trying to push.
Oh, okay, I like that.
So they're, as a whole, the organization's trying to push that as the GAA's motto.
Yep. Okay, I like that. So, how I like to think of clubs and systems, as in working in an academy system, what would be the goal of the academy? We talked about it earlier.
Improve overall health.
Overall health, that's great, yeah. If we can zoom out, what would this club hope to get from the academy? Senior players. That's so. One of when they're making any decision for the club, that should be one of the filters they run that decision through. Is this going to help us eventually produce senior players? Yeah. Does it kind of make sense? So any of the core values should always be run through this little filter. One of the main structures, the underpinning structures in sports, but in academies of late particularly, is based up around testing. Yeah. So you'll start to create lots of performance thresholds for your kids, and very often you'll be baseline testing them, right? They'll be profiling them, as discussed earlier, and you'll be working them towards a benchmark set in the first team. Yeah? You want them to hit those physical standards. There'll be a path you've designed to get them up to that level, right? I have lots of these tests in here. You recognize those words? Yeah? The biggest one I see in the world of team sports right now, of testing, it's not even often tested, but it really is, GPS. Who works with GPS? We talked about this earlier. Who knows how far the best player in the first team will run in a match? Senior, yeah.
Positional difference.
98.
But not the most. The most.
Well, in the under-20 final this year, went to extra time and made a player run 15-12.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And like if you take that, we one of our games went to extra time this year, and one of our games went 18 in extra time.
Oh, that's an extra 10 minutes?
20 minutes.
Well,
10
depending
minutes
on injury time.
The next one.
But the top player for distance also covered the top speed.
So they're a beast. So from GPS data you get top distance, top speed,
Yeah, I'll get it to you now.
anything else?
High speed.
High speed meters. What do high speed meters mean?
Meters over a certain threshold of speed.
What is that threshold?
6.5.
Is 6.5 meters per second really high? What's the consequence of being over 6.5 meters per second?
You're running, I suppose, and we're looking at the rate
Turn
straight,
out,
rate
yeah.
straight or run at that
No,
one.
no.
It was 7.6 was strides, and in football I imagine it's GAA. What does 7.5 mean?
Not very fast.
It's a sprint. It's stupid. It's a terrible threshold to be hit, but it's definitely if you any of the GPS data you'll see is recorded as a sprint 7.5 meters per second. With girls, it's been reduced down to 7 or sometimes 6.7, but that's where sprint occurs. And one of the experts in the world in sprinting says 7.6 meters per second is only a stride.
Relative to the maximum sprint speed of the individual, which is the biggest issue I have with professional.
Okay, so that's the next, where I was going next. A lot of these, all of these tests are standardized. I imagine all of your data is benchmarked against maybe to positions and maybe to age, but the number of sprints in a game are very, very rarely are yours individualized.
Our thresholds
Yeah.
for players. They were at one stage, I don't know, we changed SC coach 3 times in 3 years now, so I'm not sure.
Changed 3 times in 3 years. This is kind of getting to my point. The having GPS is more important than any of the information you're getting from GPS. Having, what's the thing that we did a whole 20 minutes on? What are the exercises we did a whole 20 minutes on? Nordics. Having Nord boards, it's everybody. It's become all of these. We have we're flooded with technical gadgets for testing, and we're taking all of these tests. We're putting now at Derby. We have 6-year-olds that have got GPS vests on for every session, and they have a designated sports scientist that's recording their data and aggregating all of their data. For what purpose, I have absolutely no idea. If we've gone through the growth and maturation stuff, pre-puberty, they're working almost purely on aerobic capacity, ability anyway, because the anaerobic ability hasn't even developed yet. So it's completely irrelevant to develop that thing for the first team because they're 6. But also there's no relation to it. You're not developing anything. It's absurd. So we have, Marty's talked about this before. You asked me for normalized data for lots of these tests on.
Yeah.
Yeah, boys and girls. Long-winded. Growth maturation status. This is chronological age for all of these tests and jumps. Yeah, you recognise most of these. So this
What do you mean
we've
by
got.
critical speed, sir?
Pardon?
What do you mean by critical speed?
Do you know 5, 10, 5?
Yeah.
Do you know what Bronco is?
Yeah.
It's a brand name. It's basically just a brand name for mass testing, it's a slightly different threshold than that. So it's looking at the difference between your maximum aerobic speed and your maximum sprint speed to find. So you can pitch a training session at the right individualized level for that kid. That kind of makes sense? So that's in kilometers per hour. Yeah? These aren't things that I'm suggesting you use. These are just really common tests, and I've just given that's the normative data for each age group, right? One of the I could have done this for all the tests, but these are differences in. Put this right on. Yeah. So these are longitudinal studies of the chronological age of critical speed, of maximum aerobic speed, broad jump distances, and this here is the maximum speed of the average age of the average 16-year-olds 60-meter sprint time, but below are the maturation adjusted, so against the 95%, a kid that's at 95%, some of them are, and some of these are at 82%. So you can see the differences here at running at these speeds. So it's impossible to say, you can't compare like one giant kid. I had a video of like a huge 11-year-old mothering at rugby, 10-year-olds all over the place. The same age kids, but there was like this much size difference in between. This is one of the tests we use, agility test that we have lovely lane in there. So you start in a penalty box, you run a corner to the penalty spot, do a figure of 8 around the top to get some curve running in, diagonal cut, and then back. And this is long. There we go. Right. Approaching PHV. So that an awesome kid approaching PHV 12.1 seconds, and post PHV is doing it in 10.3 seconds. And a really shitty one is down at 13.4, and post PHV is 11.9. Can you see how they get better no matter what, whether they're trained or not? And this is the age group versions against chronological age. So the 18-year-old, so a kid at 16 is running the same speed as the 18-year-old. So how are you going to compete with those? So there might be a 12-year-old. There might be a 14-year-old here that can beat an 18-year-old that's post PHV. You need, from a biobanding, we call this biobanding, where you're going all kids that are 85% play against all kids that are 85%, all kids that are 90% play against kids that are 90%, rather than 12-year-olds against 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds against 13-year-olds. Another issue
so like the implication for us is if we're looking at the Tyrone under 16 team and we use some sort of fitness test as to help our selection policy for under 17 development, so we, if speed is one of the greatest one of the attributes that we hold in the highest regard, so we do a 30-meter sprint test, and if we have 16-year-olds in that squad who are biologically, some of them could be 18 and some of them could be 13, and if we just take it on the raw number of what they can run over 0 to 30, then the ones who are the early matures versus the late matures, we could be potentially disregarding these late matures who could be much faster than the early matures. That makes sense.
Even over 6 to 7 month period.
Yeah. So some people, whenever we plot it, whenever we bioband it and see it like this, so we see their speed in comparison to their biological maturity rather than their chronological age, we maybe have a glimpse of what their potential is for the future, rather than disregard and say they're too slow to progress to the minor team.
Exactly. If you've got a 16-year-old that is still don't judge them against 16-year-olds. I literally have one who's just finally grown, but it's year 6, at 11, he was captain of the county at 6 different sports. He just didn't grow. By the time he was 14, he'd pretty much given up any kind of competitive sport because he hated getting his brains beaten. And it was heartbreaking to watch. It partly defined his identity in himself, and he was fast and boingy, and you know, in a school setting, they get kind of famous and they like that claim and all of that stuff is part of his identity. And all of these weird little geeky boys suddenly were 6 foot and they were faster than him, and they could barge him around. And imagine being one of those geeky boys. Feel great for them. But then the kid that didn't grow is you know, it's terrible. So you have to look at psychological consequences as well as that. But as a coach, if you could set up here, so you're just going to get the height of the parents, and then just monitor their height once every 3 months. And if you can, we can set up performance easy enough. It'll just go red, orange, or green. And if they're pre, don't make any talent ID definitive judgments of them. So you'll hear it like, why is he slow? Suddenly this kid who used to be rapid, and then you hear parents talking about it over games, and he's really slow. That's because you gain about 30% of your speed when you grow, just from growing. So he's playing against these kids who are 30% faster than him. But at some point, you need to know, is he going to grow? That's what it gives you. It gives you that insight. If you're coaching around kids, your coach's eye has probably told you for the last 15 years of coaching or whatever, you can kind of see a kid might grow, but this kind of removes that. So you're not just trusting that your instincts are right. You need to be aware that you're letting little Jesse not play. You might be missing on a start. This is not going to get you to miss out on Messi or anything, because you're never going to miss those like little guys that are geniuses. That's going to be a philosophical choice of the club. But just to make sure you're not missing out on those. So this is the normative data. Like if they're categorized by pre, you only judge them against kids that are before their growth spurt, rather than 12-year-olds.
That's running that whole out the 18-yard box back with time spot. Figure it.
That's the time for that.
10.3 seconds.
Yeah.
That's that though.
Yeah.
That's fast.
There's a wee 5-side pitch. Oh, is it a 5?
What's that?
Indoor soccer pitch.
They're what?
Is it like full-size soccer, like 18-yard box?
Yeah, soccer. Yeah. So this is 5 meters away from there.
So what distance meters is that roughly?
No idea, top of my head.
So that's what, 15 is there, right?
It's in the sheet somewhere. It's like 42 meters maybe. But
How wide is
there are
it?
6,
How
7.
wide is
the white
the box?
box is pretty wide, isn't it? No?
If it's 18 yards out, it's longer, isn't it?
16 meters wide, so and it's 26. It's 26 meters wide and 16 meters long. So yeah, you're right.
No, it's
Not
just
bad
I thought time is pretty
It's
fast.
That's between there.
This is Premier League Academy sport.
Yeah. So these are between 12 and 18-year-olds that are doing this at football academy. And we only have 2 black kids. It's not even that. Right. So if you can, where's the psychology dude?
Pardon?
Are you the psychology dude? No, you're not. Mate.
No.
There was one, wasn't it?
Oh, sure, that was psychology.
I thought there was a psychologist there. I thought I heard it while you were talking.
Maybe you need one if you're here.
So just care about the psychology of and be aware of the implications of growing or not growing, and how confidence develops, and how you fail and have to go through that failing. And when you set up systems and processes and programs, is the thing that I care most about with these kids. You have to set up a program in which they have a roadmap ahead so they objectively know where their journey is going to take them. If they're going to be tested, whatever testing protocols you have in place, they know what normal is against the real self, not against another 12-year-old, but against actually where they are from a status perspective. But they also, on that journey, they know objectively where success is at the next level, and you're pitching it at something that they can possibly succeed at as a challenge, because confidence comes from success. It doesn't come from having adults say, God, you're amazing, or well done, because this generation, that's all we've done since they're born. Well done, you breathed. Oh, you've drunk your milk. Well done, amazing, you didn't die. You're amazing. Like, yeah, so their self-confidence comes from success, and we need to use our skills to help them achieve success, both by acquiring skills, but also by them actually doing something that was challenging to them in the first place. So you have to pitch it. The program has to be at a level that they think might be daunting, their journey, but the next step is tricky, but if they try really hard, they can achieve it. I think that works right across elite level as well, if you can get elite levels to buy into this stuff. In academy football and academy rugby, I didn't look at GA because there wasn't a lot of research about it. We have real issues with apparently different slides missing, but let me find it. Oh yeah, we go. Let's put it in order. With managing kids' workloads. So you guys are going to have that for sure. With how many training sessions do your 15-year-olds do?
Depends on how many teams you play for.
Exactly. So how many do you control?
Likely one just.
So they have one training session with you?
No, I'm saying, like, for example, this year I was at school and I was also up in the county, so I was able to control 3 players in terms of their load, but they were playing club football, school football, and county football. So.
Here we go. Exactly. Right. So this is a periodized week for football. As football will go, how their training week would look like in the academy. But here is actually what it looks like from working with 15-year-olds that aren't in football in England. It's really restrictive. They only do that. They don't do anything else. They control PE. They don't do PE at school. They do it at football instead. And this is what my kids look like their week. They're constantly, basically playing with their hair on fire. They're always playing at a reduced, diminished fatigue state. So there's psychological stresses on teenagers for a start. If you work with girls, there are intense psychological stresses on being a teenage girl. But you have to be cognizant of that, hitting exam periods and stuff like that too. But the cognitive as well as the physiological stresses on teenage players is insane, and it needs to be factored in to your processes and programming, and your coaches have to have some kind of understanding of and it built into their expectations. So when they're on a pitch and somebody shows up, if you've created a good culture, they'll be trying hard. And if they're not their usual self that day, it could be just this, and it's not factored into their lives in academy coaching. They don't make this judgment of, oh, maybe you've just come from cross country, and yesterday you played a county match, and the day before you played for your club team, and you've already done training for your county match, for your county team earlier that day as well. So you have to have much more of a global view of kids, unlike with first teams where they get 2 days off a week and they pretend they don't, and it's really not that hard. So just be cognizant of that. Because of this, the consequence of that is that they get injuries, particularly, pick a good famous teenager's injury. Girls?
In girls, or you're asking us?
Either or. You go, girls.
Probably something growth related, some bars or yeah, something.
Perfect, growth related. So, what did we already discuss?
Say that again?
What did we already discuss? What can you already be monitoring for? Growth rates. So if we're already looking at maturation status, at growth rates, we already know when they're starting to grow one of the things that we can do is start to adapt. We apply, that, we look at that, their total, their global work over a week, and we can try to reduce that down, so we reduce the stresses on their tendons, and then they hopefully won't get parts or boys. Osgoods, severs, any of these, we can avoid them in most cases if you're smart about when you're planning training. Also, here's some anecdotal evidence, having had an academy doing a specific fundamental movements scheme for 8 years now. The rate of the 15-year-olds just came through for the first time that have been doing this. Not one growth-related injury, and I think that's the first time in 16 years the club that not had any. So I believe, but there's no longitudinal data on this stuff. Yeah, there you go.
Can I ask, do you feel like the surfaces, or the different surfaces, has an impact on youth injury?
Yes, it's huge. There is some research in the States on traction of the floor, basically. There's some just come out of, I did a podcast with them a couple of weeks ago, from the Gulf States, from Aspetar about, I can give Marty the details, you can change boots, which makes a big difference. It's the amount of friction that you can create. There's a prime amount, whether you exceed it or you have less, you're fine. In this, there's a sweet spot of this is the amount of torque that you're going to get ACL and ankle injuries from, twisting ankle injuries, and it's more likely to occur on artificial surfaces.
At all Thompson's work, he's just moved back to Belfast. It is 7 times more likely to ACL if you don't get the coefficient right between your shoe and the turf. But anecdotally, whenever I was working in academies in England, we were at Huddersfield and we only had one small 3G pitch indoors, like a sports bar, and our outdoor pitches in the winter time in Yorkshire, it was always raining. We didn't have access to grass, so we had the old Astro, like the sand-based, like hockey type pitch. So we would have done all of our winter training on that, and our rate of severs and heel pain was, I don't know, 12 to 15 times higher than Leeds or Man United. So the two clubs either side of us on the main road, we had 15 times higher because we were playing on a hard sand-based pitch, whereas they had already moved on to the proper 3G pitches. So that, you know, we kind of are bad to 3G pitches, but it's much better than what we used to have before that. So yeah, surface is huge for
just for like cross training. Like we would have kids in school that would be going playing handball or basketball on a indoor court, if you want to put it that way.
Right trainers, you know.
But then with the load then on their quad whenever they go sometimes to the grass.
I see with fatigue afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah. I imagine the fatigue is going to amplify any of the negative effects of playing on.
And from a coordination point of view, always warm up on what you're playing on.
Yeah.
Because there's a club close to us, and dual clubs, so Camogie and football, so it's all pitch time is critical. So that they would have warmed up on a 3G pitch and then went to the grass, their ACL rates was through the roof. You see it at Liverpool, where the pitch is so tight and the TV camera and all the wiring is underneath, just over the sideline, so it's artificial. So as soon as you cross the white line, there's artificial grass, and there was 3 in quick succession, where the players knocked the ball down the lane, ran off the pitch to go around the man, put one foot on the artificial turf, and then got injured. So that they brought in Athol from who's done that research, but it can't be fixed because all the telecommunications.
Yeah, it's the same at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
They're exactly the same issue. Sorry.
I was just about to say, I was happening again.
It's consequence of girls' hormones that people deny. 194 ACL tears in 3 years in the top 3 tiers of the Women's Football League, and of the 190, of that, that more than 60% were in the first 3 days of that period, but 80% were done on plastic pitches, on artificial pitches as well. So there's lots of stuff going on with that. Who knows what it is? It's probably multifactorial, and in my guess, do any of you work with the girls here? So is there any S&C that goes on at all? Oh yeah, you do?
Yeah.
Great. That is the single biggest thing that I think can change, that girls get. They start to get some kind of formal movement training. It's not even S&C. Some kind of formal movement training about 6 years later than boys that start since the program's kind of started. And until that's caught up, I don't want to judge the differences between the ratios because it's stark. And I'm yet to see in all of our ACL girls. One of the questions I asked them, did you do gymnastics? And I've yet to see one that did gymnastics as a young girl that's ended up tearing her ACL. Their movement qualities is just so much better because they had the opportunity to, which is crazy.
Do you think that that's a relationship then of hormones and menstrual cycle plus the lack of ability to move or body confidence moving? Like, is it both, or do you think it's more the fact that they're just less exposed to the gym in those positions?
My feeling is it's lots of things.
Yeah.
We can't change the hormone thing. I'm sure it's present. I'm sure it's part of it. But we can change lots of the other things. We can not make girls play on almost exclusively on AstroTurf. We can make girls not do all of their training late at night when they're knackered, having had already worked that day or been to college. We can help them earlier develop the fundamental movement skills that they never do because they're trying to catch up on football because they're already 4,000 hours behind boys at playing football, even the good ones. We need to find a way to do that. I'm not sure what it's like over here with girls in GA.
They're not great.
It's got a lot better.
Well, like, I don't mean they're not great as in,
There's a leap one right beside you. Like,
I'm talking like
it's harsh.
you're no, but I mean in the sense of knowledge of that, like knowledge of the gym, knowledge of how to train themselves, knowledge of how to manage their week isn't great. Like from the clubs I'm going out speaking to, the question I always get is, so how do we add these in, and what age should we have the girls training? Whereas when you speak to the boys side of the clubs, like the hurling and the football with the boys, it's like an automatic assumption that they do it. But with the girls, it's like, no, we need to tell you that you need a decent S&C coach. It's always a second thought. And they don't understand why, because there's this, like there's 2 types of research out there, and one I found is that they say the menstrual cycle doesn't affect them at all. You know, they say that, there's a study done that they measured quad strength and knee extension through the menstrual cycle. Quad strength didn't change, size of the quad didn't change, so they were like, so you don't, strength's don't affect it. Tyrone, you should be fine. But then if you take a female team and you look across how females respond to the menstrual cycle, it's up and down and all over the show. Some people are fine, some people have massive effects. But girls don't talk about it, teams don't talk about it, coaches don't talk about it. And then I think that all leads into this, and they just pull their heads up and don't want to know.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, girls in terms of training is probably not fantastic. We're getting better. But yeah, I still don't think it's in conjunction with the boys at the minute.
It's a money thing too.
Yeah.
I think whenever the GA comes when all the organisations come together, it'll probably get a lot better instead of just being the LGFA. The GA will come over here. I think whenever it comes as one, it'll come.
But like even the clubs, like I took a Camori Club 8 girls hurling club, like, and like where you want to ask for a strength and conditioning coach, the club will laugh at you.
Yeah.
You know, where the lads would be getting in the water.
Yeah.
You know, and like obviously like my own hurling club is sort of first every year we get our senior team has a strength and conditioning coach. So like and that money was always issue. So I'm not saying it's just a female thing, but I'm just saying like
understand.
think this is bigger.
Boys get it. Girls, the Derby County, they have 2 gyms and the girls aren't allowed in apart from 7:30 at night on Thursday for an hour, and only the first team, not the academy.
It's not much different here.
Yeah, that's how it is.
It's not.
But yeah, you add into that then the fact that girls think they're going to get bulky from gymming, and there's an aesthetics thing as well.
Yeah. So, do you have any education path for the kids? So we have not just for Derby, but for Monty's gym. The 3 times a year we'll do a workshop on nutrition, a workshop on recovery, and a workshop on hormones. And worst case, it opens the door for a conversation that I've had people, teams I consulted with about it, say like you can't have a workshop on hormones and women's hormones with women because you're an old bald dude. I kind of get what you're saying, but there are 3 female coaches at the club and they don't know anything. They don't even know what's going on in their bodies, having discussed stuff going on with them. It's important that you share information and you begin, as parents here, it's really important that you both understand what's happening but also create a line of communication so it's normal to talk about. I want them to talk about it. So as part of our female pathway, I didn't expect to go down the female pathway, I didn't realise I had one. As part of our club, we do CPD with all of the technical coaches, so they go through the hormonal stuff as well. Lots of them get very uncomfortable and don't like it and giggly because they used to be footballers and they're mostly dickheads. But from the moment they actually understand that this is going to be a thing, the girls get a free pass. So at any moment that they can just play their pass that month, it's got nothing to do with bleeding. It's just, that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you, that it generally has nothing to do with actually bleeding, but hormonally, maybe it's not even tendons. You might just be a little bit slower. So I see over the course of a month training, not in outside sometimes, but in gym and with jump scores and with power, they have a squidgy day. And sometimes it's 3 days. At some point, and you probably feel it, and you don't, or maybe if you don't train, you feel it but didn't know what it was. I don't know what it is, but it manifests itself this day, and I think that's the dangerous day for breaking.
Yeah.
And if they're trying to put their foot in the ground and change like 3G into the opposite direction, and they're like, that was her second day. She just popped. She's generally got good movement around there, and it was just too late. And she's sadly done this 3 times. But I wonder if it's just that, and maybe a little bit of fatigue. Like very often, girls get very tired at some point during the month, and fatigue plays a role in the central nervous system. You just fire a little bit late. That's all. It might have nothing to do with tendons, which is the thing that gets researched.
Yeah, that's because that was my whole thing on it, is that ignore that bit because it's the other symptoms.
Yeah.
It's the tiredness, it's you feeling like Bambi, it's that thing that's the
Sometimes
injury. Yeah. That's the injury risk.
Yeah, I do wonder. I've spoken to Kirsty, who is the researcher in this, and she is very, very. Do you know her, Kirsty Sale?
No.
Do you know Frank Sale's nutrition guy?
Yeah, I know them both, but not personally.
Right. Yeah, she openly admits that there's stuff they don't know, but it's become a culture war issue, as the whole world has about everything. That there'll be women that are working in football and sports that are so adamant that it's got nothing to do with being a female at all, because you're saying we're weak and we can't play football. When there is something, and Kirsty is not that, but she's just saying there's no evidence to prove that there is. That's all she's saying. There's no evidence yet to prove that there is, and I think they're probably researching the wrong thing. That's all. Which is kind of bye-bye. One of the things, I've completely gone off the slides here. You know when we were going through the nodes and the links between systems that Stu was talking about earlier? So did you dispute the size of the circles on screen? Yeah. So do you kind of know what I'm talking about? Little circles and the connected lines and how a system works together. So it's for you, Stu. I would argue a little bit that the size of the circle does matter, and it doesn't matter from the perspective of some people are more important than others, which it does kind of count, but it's that everybody is aware that they have an equal role within that system, but some people have more skill than others, if that makes sense. But you all, for the system to work, you have to have clearly defined roles, which is kind of key to being an academy, but you all value and trust one another's skills. So I had something with paper, and we don't actually have any, where I would like for you to have written down your role, and then also your 3 most valuable skills that you have. Because I'm not entirely sure, there's lots of reflective practice in our industry right now. Josh is selling books, and I'm not a big kind of stressed guy in the first place, so I don't feel stressed about my job. But I do feel it's really important that we understand our place in the world and the skills that we offer and the things that we're good at, and we value ourselves. And then it's important that as part of the system, that everybody values each other's role in that, and that that kind of leads to trust. And that, as you guys were talking about earlier, that was a great conversation that kind of led onto this. That now, what did you say to me earlier?
It was just that us, the 3 of us worked together, just finished with the Tyrone senior ladies, and I was the on-field coach. Jerry done the strength and conditioning, Connor was the physio, and I probably looked upon my role as being far more important because I needed the girls on the pitch than what these guys were doing. I would come in here, start a session to ask Connor who wasn't playing, but I think, oh, why are you out on the pitch? No, but listening to what Stuart was talking about and all the systems coming together and working together, we will probably work much better going forward now with that sort of link and a better understanding of each other's roles where we all fit for the one purpose.
Yep.
And rather than, and Stuart touched on it as well, these silos and thinking that it was all about me when it actually isn't. So I find that really, really interesting because it'll help us working together going forward.
Exactly. And if you get to see what he's good at, how that helps you.
Yeah.
But if the underpinning foundation of all of this is making kids for the first team, you can see how his skills will help you do that.
We've got the first team.
There you go. But you can't, as the principles go, it's recognising one another, the skills that you have that make both me more valuable at this thing we're doing together to make. So you have to have these core principles. Everybody needs to understand them and know them so that you can utilise them for all your decision making, but also they're core for the filter of how you behave around one another, so you can always be cognizant of that thing that they're trying to help you. That they're there because they're skillful, and how can I utilise his skill?
Yeah, it was about realising the value maybe of some of the players actually having to rehab properly to be in the gym while they're out on the grass, rather than thinking let's get everybody out to the grass because that's the most important thing.
Yeah. But interestingly, from my perspective as an S&C, I obviously in this forum I don't know anything about GA, so I'll always be coming to you asking about this stuff. I was with a ballet dancer. We have 3 ballet dancers, two ballet dancers, one just left, and we've been working with them for 4 or 5 years. And a conversation I had this very week about the demands of her getting a job in a ballet school, in a professional ballet school, is all about turnout. Does anybody know what this means? So it's something about how you stand with your feet. Your feet have to be parallel and touching here, so you have to have the right amount of internal rotation of the hip to get on both sides, and you have to jump and land, and your feet have to be touching. And we jump all the time in the gym because I want her to produce more force and to be fast and elastic. And I've been very cognizant since we started to work together that I wasn't trying to fix her feet, but she's still been developing these movement problems for her job because she's much more in line with us instead of having to work around this. So it's, in the long drawn out way, it's really important that we delve into your skills because you're the one basically that sets the rules for that we have to get the kids to adhere to. You're providing the challenges, the physical challenges that they have to be stronger, faster at doing those skills. Does that kind of make sense? I wanted to go in the last thing, a little bit practical, with the testing. Here, so we have all of these tests. What do they mean? Who, have you all done CMJs? Yeah. What does it tell you?
I hate you above the ground.
Reinforced level.
Force development? Are you sure?
No, I just said something.
Said some words? Yeah, we get to the end of the day.
Sure. I just realised I already said it.
Anybody else?
How high the plates think you're jumping?
That's as good as anything. Is how high the plates think you're jumping, or how high your little gadget you've got on your feet
Yeah.
thinks you're jumping. What does, do you know what the 5-10-5 is? It would be what type of modality would it be testing? Change direction, agility. It's very often called an agility drill. Thankfully, it's been reduced to change of direction because there's no agility component. What's it telling us?
How fast you run your corner turn.
Measuring time, so it's, and we change direction twice.
But we use them. How does that relate to your sport?
Tells us, depends how you do it. If you do a left versus right, so all left turns versus all right turns, it may tell you something about their symmetry or asymmetry with their efficiency to decelerate.
Nice. So we're getting a story here, but there's only one person, and we use them across the club. It's kind of what we're getting at. What does you do? IMTPs, isometric mid-thigh balls. Use them. You don't have in the club.
No, we ISO squat instead.
Okay. So iso squat. What are you testing?
It's most better when the senior team do it. No?
Yeah, like the plates come in this year, so the only people who have been ISO squatting up to now are guys who have been injured.
Okay. So it's
Especially
part of your
long-term injuries.
RTP.
Sorry?
Part of your return to play.
Yeah, like an early stage, and like especially if we have historical data on, just make sure they're generally back as strong as they were previously.
Right.
So we look at, you know, percentage of body weight
Yep.
they produce, and then we look at left-right symmetries. So they may help us indicate rehab prescriptions. So if somebody had a big asymmetry, we still wouldn't be getting them to do a bipedal exercise. So if they're massively asymmetrical and iso squat, we're not squatting them
Yep.
on 2 feet.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can I just go back, but this goes back to maybe trusting your group or your team, because if you have a physio that knows their job and they're coming and saying, right, well, this is what they scored, they can only do this amount of training, then you as the coach has to go, right, I trust you. And
So that's a
all
great
the-
part of the process. But you still then have to trust they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I feel like you need, as a club, part of the philosophy, part of the foundational principles, you have to have a rigorous process about what you're testing. Because why are you testing? Why are you fitness testing?
Well, in my eyes, the reason you test is to make sure that players are on the grass, because that's where 95% of the learning occurs.
Okay. Anybody have one fitness test that is your favourite to get to give you specific information about that you think is really valuable?
A 30-meter sprint.
Okay. Bear in mind, I use, this is my data. I use all of those.
Probably that one of the flying 10, and the anecdotal evidence is old Michael Home. When old Michael Home doesn't go over a certain meters per second, we know he's going to slow down. So, and
So
then-
we're screening.
And then
The
you let,
injury
you
screen.
let him sit, and then he lights it up. You know, you give him a rest for a couple of days and then he just goes and bees who he is.
That's fascinating. So literally, I was asking questions. I wasn't saying these are rubbish. I want to know your reasons why, and you should ask the reasons why. It's kind of my point, is that you should ask the reasons why we're doing this test, because it's important you know. It's important that whoever made the decision knows, and there's a reason for it. And what they're going to do with the answers is the most important thing. You're going to sit somebody down because they're injured, maybe, or not. But what Marty's saying, it helps on the return to play process. Absolutely valid. I don't think you shouldn't have fitness tests. I think you should be really rigorous about which ones you're choosing.
Well, come back to, so the week before the Ireland final this year, on the Tuesday night, Owen at home couldn't give over 7.2 meters per second, and whereas everybody else was, so he didn't train the whole week.
Okay.
And then he scored, he got man of the match in the All Ireland final, but he had points from play. So, you know,
So like, we have a first team manager who wants to play a certain style of football that's very it's physically demanding. So then we choose certain fitness tests to make sure that the player is physically capable of
They can hit the
playing
standards
that
that are
style
set.
of play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also then removes any doubt or any excuse. So if we have a poor performance, you can't. You know, the first thing is they're not fit enough.
Yeah.
So-
we have exactly that.
Yeah, and you know, and sometimes it's the manager that says they're not fit enough. But if we have it in black and white, look, here's the test that we have chosen. This is why we've chosen this test. Here are the results. It's a technical or tactical reason why we look like that. It's not a physical reason why we look like that. And if it is a physical reason, it's fatigue. So let's go back. Let's look at the build into that match.
Yeah. So your, as it should be, your training protocols are set up around the game, demands of the game. So GPS gives you an insight into the demands of the game. Is there any chance that sometimes GPS is you're showing it is ready to that these are your capacities?
It's what, sorry?
It's that you believe that these are your capacities. So you see what the GPS sheet says over the course of the season, and they are treated as capacities, and we need to use those capacities in training to start pushing that maybe 15% that capacity, without ever really knowing that that's their capacity. Does that make sense?
sometimes you're saying the data, the science, to actually break through the ceiling, and you actually, just because you're only supposed to do 9 kilometers, you actually can do 10 and a half.
Tradition
Yeah.
is leading performance. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm saying.
So it's sometimes psychological more than anything else.
Yeah, sometimes we're accepting what's happened rather than what you have the ability to. Yeah. So maybe think about when designing tests, when you're picking which tests you're going to pick for to look at physiology and look at capacities that you can then use to design your training around pushing. That kind of makes sense.
Like the big one that we use GPS, I know we talked about it earlier, but it was more to know not to push it, and sometimes you're going into training going, right, we only want to hit 5k today because, you know, we have a game in 4 days.
Train load.
Yeah, it was more about
absolutely.
training.
Keep
It was
chronic
more-
workload relationship.
It was more that than, but there was nights it was like, right, let's ramp it up here, and let's, you know, and there was nights there was 12k hit on training.
Yeah.
You know.
So I would definitely. I've always wondered that. What is the actual capacity of the? Did you when the players left the pitch? Is that all you got? Did you literally give everything you possibly could in that 90 minutes or however long? 80 minutes.
60 or 70.
60. Is that how long the game is?
The underage
Definitely
teams
felt longer.
at 60. The senior team plays 70, but the underage, so everything up until that plays 60.
Right. Okay.
And the club level players play 60.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So just a more rigorous process about which technology you use, which technology you spend money on, and which tests you're going to use, because you really only want to find out things information that's going to help with your training process to help your players perform better. Just the point.
And then I suppose the data informs the times. Those times, strength and conditioning man Connor was a wee bit, we didn't get enough. But then you looked at the amount of accelerations. It was because training was in smaller grids.
This is, I'm not going to do it, I was going to be practical about this, but we don't, because time, everybody's knackered. You use blade spots before? We've got
Play spots. No, we don't have them here.
Right. So, really simply, stand up everybody. Can I have one volunteer? Okay. Simple task. We can do 3 tasks. There is 2 rules. Right. You have to be stood on this line. Right. Before you have to stand on this line with 2 feet. Before you touch, you have to stand on one or kick it. But you have to put your foot on a line, whichever line shows. Right. Okay, you have, let's shorten this, got 30 seconds. Let's see. Right, what this is going to do is count, like accelerations and decelerations. What you're getting with accelerations and decelerations is a count. 3, 2, 1, go. So you're ready now to use your left foot. Some fancy dancing,
You do well there, Andy, little kid.
That's one of the jumps out of Tyrone.
Hey, Tyrone, good, who's like it?
He's not allowed to use his feet, never mind his left foot.
Okay, we've got 34, 30 seconds. Okay? Not bad? Feel like your leg?
Yeah, sound like.
Yes, stand the leg, stand the leg. Right. So, GPS, you're going to get accels and decels. So, what would be good in a game is a combination of 130 accels and decels in a game. Oh, you worked hard, right? You'll get a reward for that. Well done, you're brilliant. We'll set training up around you getting over the course of the week 3 lots of that because it's optimizing your capacities. Capacities, yeah. Right. Same rule.
Run on the left.
Same rule.
Ladies, head in.
30 seconds.
George will not be worried about you tomorrow, I tell you that.
Left foot, same rule. He wishes he didn't volunteer now. Don't worry. It's nippy as well, isn't it? 16. Is that better or worse?
Harder, yeah.
34? 16. Is he better or worse?
Less.
It's definitely less.
Was it a harder test?
So what information are we getting here?
It was a completely harder test.
But you're getting that because you get the context of seeing this. But even then you aren't quantifying how much harder, what physiological impact it's having. All you're seeing is numbers. Right, I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, same rule.
Back to the ladies' head.
Same rule, left foot.
Okay.
Go. Got it. Brilliant. 16 again. Thank you. Start the same as the last time.
I was more thinking, where's this one?
Yeah.
Can't
So,
see anything else.
so the difference in those 3, the difference in those 3 drills, right? The information I'm getting is in 30 seconds he did 34 touches. So in 30 seconds he did 68 accels and decels. Then he did 32. They need to clearly say which one's harder, which one's physiologically harder than the body. The last one. What exercise uses don't tell us anything else. And we're set up training because of this number. We have to be careful about the information that we're actioning. Yeah? Does that make sense? Brilliant. Right, that was awesome. Thank you.